Ever felt a moment change everything? One touch, one glance that cracks you open in ways you never saw coming. This is a story about crossing lines you never thought you would, about desire, guilt, and the quiet ache of being seen. If you've ever stood at the edge of a choice that could unravel you, stay with us. And if you crave stories that dig deep into the heart's shadows, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. They say life is just a series of moments, some small, some significant, but occasionally there's that one moment that comes unexpectedly and cracks something deep within you. No matter how hard you try to mend it, you're never quite the same again. That moment arrived for me the day my stepson entered that room. I wish I could say it was just an ordinary day. I wish I could say I didn't sense it coming, but I did. Not in a loud, obvious way, but quietly, subtly, like a shift in the wind before a storm. Like that stillness right before thunder splits the sky. And what's strange is that the moment it happened, the second he crossed that threshold, my heart did something it skipped, as if it recognized something before my mind could catch up. There was something in his eyes that day, not the usual teenage indifference, not the quiet politeness he always wore like armor. This time, there was a knowing, a heaviness, something that didn't belong to a boy anymore. And maybe that's why I didn't breathe right for the next few hours. Maybe that's why the air in that hallway felt thicker, like the walls were holding their breath with me. I know how this sounds. I know what you're probably thinking, but if you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever been so desperate to be seen, to be felt that you forget where the line is, you'll understand. You'll understand why I froze when he looked at me that way, why I didn't open my mouth to stop him, why something in me leaned forward instead of pulling away. I wish I could give you a clean story, one with clear villains and easy answers. But this story, it's messy. It's full of moments I'm not proud of, full of thoughts I never wanted to admit out loud. But I'm telling it anyway, because somewhere out there, someone else is standing in that same hallway, facing their own impossible moment, and maybe hearing mine will keep them from walking into the same room. Or maybe they'll walk in anyway, just like I did. So, if you're ready, if you want the truth, the raw, messy, human kind of truth, then stay with me. It's about to get uncomfortable. It's about to get real. And if you haven't already, subscribe now to Heartfelt Tales Unfold for the stories that live in the gray areas, the ones that blur the line between right and wrong. Because life doesn't always give you black and white. Sometimes all you've got is a shadow standing in the doorway. Our home was always quiet, not the comforting kind of quiet, not the peaceful, warm silence where people rest and feel safe. No, this was the kind of quiet that presses on your chest, that stretches across the room like fog, like something's missing, but you can't quite name it. I used to think it was just stress. We were both busy. He worked long hours, came home tired, buried himself in the news or his phone. And me, I just floated, cooked the meals, cleaned the house, went to bed before him most nights, just so I wouldn't have to notice the way he didn't touch me anymore. It's strange how a house can look picture perfect on the outside, but inside feel colder than winter. We had the nice kitchen, the polished floors, the matching towels, but the air in there, it didn't hold laughter. It didn't hold affection. It held silence and distance. We'd been married over 10 years. At first, it was good. Not fairy tale good, but comfortable, safe. We weren't fiery, we weren't wild, but we had a rhythm. And then slowly over time, that rhythm faded. He stopped asking how my day was, stopped noticing new haircuts, new dresses, even on the nights I stood in front of him, hoping he'd just see me, really see me. Instead, he'd nod, or worse, nothing at all. I can't tell you the last time he looked me in the eyes and smiled. Not the kind of smile that says, I want you. Just a smile, a moment of recognition. It was like I was living beside a man who used to know me. Now he was more like a tenant, polite, distant, and uninterested. And then there was his son, my stepson, 18. He moved in full-time after his mother got remarried and relocated. Quiet boy, polite to a fault, always cleaned his dishes, kept to himself. At first, I thought he was just shy. But over time, I started to notice. He watched everything. Not in a creepy way, just observant. He saw things his father didn't, things I didn't think anyone noticed, like when I wore perfume on a random Tuesday, or when I cooked his favorite meal. Even though I never asked, he'd nod, say thank you, and there was something in the way he said it, like he meant it, like it mattered to him that I noticed him too. We never had deep conversations, but when we did talk, he listened, really listened. His eyes didn't wander to his phone or the TV. He didn't interrupt. He just sat there, fully present. And when you haven't felt that in years, that kind of attention feels like sunlight after a long winter. I didn't think anything of it at first. He was just a respectful young man, a good kid, thoughtful, reserved. But then little things started happening. He'd offer to help carry groceries. He'd sit at the kitchen counter while I cooked, asking about my day. He'd compliment a necklace or a dress softly, not flirty, just noticing. And I soaked it in. God, I soaked it in. Because for so long, no one had looked at me like I was worth paying attention to. No one had cared if I was tired, if I was lonely, if I was hurting. And then this young man, this boy I helped raise, he started doing all the things my husband no longer did. And I started leaning into it more than I should have. I found myself wearing lipstick to the grocery store again, fixing my hair before he came downstairs in the morning. I told myself it was innocent, that I just wanted to feel human again. But deep down, I think I already knew. I was reaching for something, craving something. And the worst part, I wasn't sure I wanted to stop because sometimes loneliness doesn't feel like an empty room. Sometimes it feels like being surrounded by people and still going unnoticed. And when someone finally looks at you like they see you, really see you, that kind of gaze, it can undo a person. That was the space we were in. A quiet house, a distant husband, a boy who looked with too much understanding in his eyes, and a woman slowly forgetting where the line was. It started on a Thursday. I remember because it had rained the night before, and everything smelled like wet earth and fading summer. My head was pounding that morning, one of those dull, slow aches that settle behind your eyes and make everything feel too loud. So I called in sick. First time in a long while. I made myself some tea, curled up on the couch under the throw blanket, and tried to just breathe. The house was quiet. My husband had left that morning for an overnight work trip, some conference in another city. He kissed me on the forehead before leaving. Not the lips, never the lips anymore. And when the door closed behind him, It felt like the house exhaled, like it could finally relax, like I could finally relax. Around noon, I was still in my robe, half asleep on the couch, when I heard the front door open. I wasn't expecting anyone. It was my stepson. He wasn't supposed to be home yet. School didn't end until 3 o'clock. He stepped inside, saw me wrapped up on the couch, and paused. His backpack slid off his shoulder. "Hey," he said, his voice low, like he didn't want to startle me. "Hey," I answered, trying to sit up straighter. "You okay? Why are you home so early?" He rubbed the back of his neck. I had a half day, exams week. Then he looked around like he was unsure whether he should even be there. I needed to grab something from the spare room. That room. We called it the spare room, but really it was more like a time capsule. Old furniture, dusty boxes, a lamp that never worked right. No one ever went in there, not unless they had to. I blinked, still foggy from sleep and headache. "The spare room?" I asked. He nodded. "I think I left my sketch pad in there from months ago." He walked slowly down the hall, then stopped right in front of the door, hand hovering just above the knob. He didn't open it. He just stood there like he was waiting for something or someone. That's when I got up, walked over, and pulled open the drawer where we kept the spare key. We locked that room because of the loose window latch. It had a habit of sliding open in storms, more of a formality than anything else. When I handed him the key, that's when it happened. Our fingers touched barely, just for a second, but it was like something passed between us, like a tiny electric thread, and I flinched. Not because it hurt, but because it didn't. It felt warm, intentional, like that single touch had weight. He looked at me then, not the way a boy looks at a woman who raised him, not even the way a student looks at a teacher. It was something else. I can't explain it, really, but there was a stillness in him, a quiet confidence like he was waiting to see what I would do next. And me? I should have laughed it off, should have walked away. Instead, I just stood there, watching him unlock the door. He stepped inside, paused, looked around like he was remembering something. I leaned in the doorway, arms crossed, pretending not to care. But inside, I was spiraling. Why did I feel warm all of a sudden? Why did my pulse stick faster in my throat? Why was I still standing there when I could have, should have, gone back to the couch? He found the sketch pad, held it up with a little smile. "Here it is," he said. I smiled back. Too long, too much. And as he walked past me, close, too close, I caught his scent. Something clean, faint cologne. A reminder that he wasn't a child anymore. Not by any stretch. He brushed my arm as he passed. Not by accident. I felt it. A deliberate graze. Soft. Almost apologetic. I should have said something. I didn't. I just closed the door behind him and stood there, hands still on the knob, breath stuck in my chest. That was the moment. It didn't look like much from the outside. A sick day, a sketch pad, a shared glance. But something shifted. Subtle, undeniable. Something in the air between us changed, like we had both stepped onto a path we couldn't quite see, but already knew where it might lead. And I wish I could say I turned around. I wish I could say I locked that door and never opened it again. But the truth is, I went back to the couch, sat there in silence, and let myself remember how it felt when his fingers brushed mine, and how, for the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel invisible anymore. I sat there for a long time after he left the room, just sitting, staring at nothing, trying to calm the noise inside my head. I told myself it was nothing, that it was just a moment, that I was tired, but I could still feel the warmth of his touch on my fingers, still smell the faint trace of his cologne in the hallway air. And that scared me because it wasn't supposed to feel like that. He was my stepson. I had known him since he was barely a teenager. I helped pack his lunch for school. I reminded him to wear sunscreen in the summer. I bought his shampoo. But now I couldn't stop thinking about the way he looked at me. Not like a boy, not even like a man. It was something else. Like he saw through me, saw all the pieces I'd been hiding for years. The cracks, the longing, the ache. I hated myself for noticing. The way his eyes lingered when I walked into the room, the way his voice softened when we were alone. And I hated myself more for not looking away. I started questioning everything. Every smile, every shared glance over dinner, every casual touch that lasted just a second too long. Was it motherly? Was I imagining it? Was I lonely? Or was something else creeping in, something I didn't want to name? And then came the guilt. Thick, heavy, like a stone pressing down on my chest. I thought about my husband, about how far away he felt now, how our bed had turned cold, not from lack of heat, but from absence. His body was there some nights, but his mind, his heart gone. I tried. God, I tried to reach him. I planned 8 nights he forgot. I wore that black dress he used to love. He barely looked up from his phone. Our last anniversary, he brought home takeout, a soggy bag with the wrong order. No card, no kiss, just silence, and a faint apology that didn't even reach his eyes. And so I stopped trying. I stopped asking, stopped hoping. But I never stopped needing to be seen, to be touched, to be wanted. I started feeling like a ghost in my own life, floating through rooms I used to belong in, smiling through dinners I didn't taste, answering questions no one was really asking. So when he looked at me like that, like I was something worth noticing, like I mattered, even for just a moment, something in me cracked, and then something slipped through. I told myself it wasn't wrong to want to feel alive again. It wasn't wrong to crave connection, to long for warmth, to need to be touched, not out of obligation, but out of desire. It wasn't wrong to want to be seen, was it? I started second-guessing everything. The way I sat on the couch when he was home, the clothes I picked, the way I wore my hair. Was I doing it for me? Or was I hoping he'd notice? I'd catch myself listening for his footsteps when he came in from school. I'd feel the air change when he entered the room, how the silence between us wasn't empty anymore. It was charged. It was heavy. And I didn't know what to do with it. Sometimes he'd say something simple, like, "You look nice today," and I'd pretend not to care, pretend to brush it off. But inside, I'd hold on to it, turn it over in my mind like a secret, because it had been so long since anyone had said anything like that to me. I hated myself for needing it, for wanting it, for waiting for it. But the truth was, I was starved. Starved for attention, for softness, for someone to look at me like I was more than just a fixture in the background of their life. And maybe I started looking at him differently, too. Not because I meant to, not because I planned to, but because the human heart, It doesn't always follow the rules. Some nights, I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, my husband snoring beside me, turned away, and I'd wonder, how did I end up here? How did this boy, this man, become the only person in this house who made me feel like I still existed? I wish I could say I snapped out of it, that I reminded myself of my role, that I shut down those thoughts before they took root. But I didn't. I let them grow quietly, carefully, like wild vines twisting through the cracks of a house that no longer felt like home. And deep down, I think I knew something was coming, something I wouldn't be able to take back. After that day, nothing felt the same. The house didn't change. The walls were still the same color. The furniture hadn't moved an inch, but the air was different. He avoided me, not in an obvious way, not slamming doors or skipping meals, but in those quiet ways that only someone watching closely would notice. He wouldn't look me in the eye. He'd sit farther away on the couch, say less, smile less, and I did the opposite. I started overcompensating, cooking too much, talking too much, laughing at things that weren't funny, trying to patch over something we both knew couldn't be patched. I couldn't stop thinking about it. That moment in the spare room, the way his hands felt, the way his eyes searched mine, like he was looking for permission, and I gave it. But now he couldn't even look at me anymore. And yet I still dreamed of that moment. And that made it worse, because I wasn't supposed to want it again. But I did. In my head, I replayed it, not just the touch, but the ache behind it, the desperation, the hunger to feel something. Then my husband came home. He walked through the door with his usual tired sigh, dropped his bag by the stairs, and gave me a half hug on his way to the kitchen. I stood there frozen, because I couldn't look him in the face. But I tried. I smiled too wide, asked about his trip, poured his drink before he even took off his shoes. Anything to keep his eyes off me, but still. He paused at one point, just stared at me for a beat too long. Not lovingly, not suspiciously either, just blank, like he was trying to figure out what felt off, and I panicked, not outwardly, but inside my heart dropped. Was it written all over my face? Did he know? That night at dinner, it was quiet, just the clinking of silverware and forced small talk. My stepson barely said a word, didn't touch his food, excused himself early. I watched him disappear down the hallway, listened to his door close, and I could feel the distance stretching between us, thick as fog, sharp as glass. My husband didn't say anything about it, just muttered something about teenagers and went back to scrolling through his phone. But me? I couldn't eat another bite. I couldn't sit still. My skin felt tight, my breath shallow. The next few days were a minefield. Every time I heard a creak in the hallway, I jumped. Every time my phone buzzed, I thought it might be him saying something, anything. But he didn't. He kept to himself. Left early for school. Came home late, headphones in, eyes down. I tried to talk to him once, just in passing. Asked if he needed anything from the store. He didn't even stop walking, just shook his head, barely audible. No, I'm good. He couldn't even look at me anymore. And it crushed me because I thought maybe we both felt it. Maybe it wasn't just loneliness and need. Maybe it meant something. But now it just felt like shame, like a secret rotting in the walls. I started to feel paranoid. Did someone hear? Did he tell anyone? Would he hate me for what happened? Would he hate himself? I lay awake at night, listening to the clock tick, listening to the house breathe around me, waiting for it all to come crashing down. Every glance from my husband felt like a spotlight. Every silence at the dinner table felt like an accusation. I checked the spare room more than once, like some part of me expected the air in there to still be thick with what we'd done, like the walls had watched us and would never forget. And I couldn't stop the thoughts. I missed him. I missed his eyes, the way he listened, the way he made me feel like a woman again. Not a ghost, not a servant, not a roommate. But how could I miss someone who wouldn't even meet my gaze now? I thought I wanted to be seen, but now that I wanted to disappear. The guilt came in waves. Some days, it sat quietly in the background, like a dull hum I could almost ignore. Other days, it slammed into me without warning, like standing in the ocean and suddenly getting knocked off your feet by a wave you didn't see coming. Shame, regret, and right alongside them, longing. I hated myself for wanting more of something I knew I should have never touched in the first place. But the truth was, I missed it. I missed him. I missed the way I felt that day in the spare room. Seen, wanted, awake. And then I hated myself all over again. I started questioning everything. Everything I thought I knew about who I was, what I stood for. I had spent years telling myself I was loyal, that I was patient, that I was kind, that I would never be the kind of woman who stepped outside the lines. But then I did, and it made me wonder, had those lines already faded long before that moment ever came? Had I been slowly unraveling in silence for years without even realizing it? I looked at my husband differently now, not with anger, but with a kind of quiet, aching distance, like looking at someone you used to know in a dream. His routines hadn't changed. He still sipped his coffee in silence every morning, still scrolled through the news while I made breakfast, still slept turned away from me on the far side of the bed. And I wondered, was he lonely too? Had he stopped reaching for me because I stopped reaching first? Or had we both just let go, one quiet day at a time? I thought about who I was before all this, before the numbness, before the ache, before the touch that changed everything. I started journaling just to make sense of the mess inside me. I'd write down questions I couldn't answer. Was it loneliness? Was it betrayal? Or was it both, disguised as something deeper? Some days I told myself I had manipulated him, that I had let my need for attention blind me, that I had taken advantage of someone younger, vulnerable, craving connection. Other days, I convinced myself it had been mutual, that he had reached too, that we had met in a moment of weakness that belonged to both of us. But then the guilt would rise again, hot in my throat, bitter in my chest, because no matter how many ways I tried to frame it, no matter how many pages I filled with explanations, nothing changed what I had done. And still, I couldn't forget it, couldn't unfeel it, couldn't stop the memory from replaying in my mind. The look in his eyes, the way my skin came alive beneath his hands. The silence afterward, thick and deafening. I didn't recognize myself anymore. Not in the mirror, not in my voice, not in the way I moved through the world. Everything felt unfamiliar, like I had slipped out of my old skin and didn't know how to wear the new one. I began avoiding mirrors, stopped wearing makeup, stopped doing anything that might remind me of the woman I was in that room. Or worse, the woman I might still be deep down. I questioned whether I even deserved to be forgiven. Not by him, not by my husband, but by myself. And I didn't have the answer. All I had were pages and pages of confusion and a heart that wouldn't stop aching, not just from guilt, but from missing the one person I wasn't allowed to miss. Because even after everything, even after the silence, the shame, the space between us, I still dreamed of that room. Have you ever made a choice you couldn't take back and didn't know if you even wanted to? One of those moments that sits in your bones that you carry with you everywhere you go, even if no one else knows it's there. If you've ever felt torn between what's right and what your heart was begging you for, I want to hear from you because I can't be the only one. I need to know I'm not the only one. Sometimes it helps just to know someone else out there understands. Even if you don't have the answers, even if it's just a whisper in the dark. So, if any part of this hit something inside you, if any part of this made you feel seen, even in the mess, even in the shame, say something. Write it in the comments. Share your truth. And if this is the kind of story that speaks to you, the ones we don't talk about but live with every day, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell for Heartfelt Tales Unfold. Because here we peel back the layers of the human heart, one story at a time. You know, desire has a way of wearing disguises. It walks in, looking like comfort, like connection, like salvation even. But underneath it, it can be something else entirely. Something wild, something dangerous, something that takes more than it gives. I thought I was just reaching for something small, just a moment of warmth, just a flicker of being seen. But that moment, it split me open, and once that happened, there was no putting the pieces back where they were. I wish I had some neat ending to give you. A resolution, a lesson tied in a bow. But real life doesn't work like that. Some choices, they just live in you, echo inside you, whisper things when the house is quiet and no one's around. Some rooms you walk into, you never really walk out of. Not completely.